Hello, writers and crafters. I'm Valerie Ihsan.
And I'm Erick Mertz.
And this is episode 83 of the podcast. And it's September 7th, 2022, as we record this. Today, we're talking about the author services side hustle, which I'm excited about. But first, we will do a couple of announcements and such. There is no new patrons this week, but a big squeezy hug and a thank you to our existing patrons for believing in us and in the podcast. Our podcast is sponsored by our current patrons at patreon.com/Valerie Ihsan. For as low as $1 a month, you can get a shout out on the podcast and lots of other stuff. So go to patreon.com/Valerie Ihsan and check it all out. We had a comment. Yeah, we had a comment on episode 78, which was finding the core of your memoir. And
Okay.
Mary says, the craft of writing memoir is new to me. Your discussion was both informative and interesting. I had no idea how methodical and intuitive processes worked together to create and write memoir.
Okay.
Nice. Let's see. Other announcements.
Hopefully Mary she's new to writing memoir. Hopefully Mary continues writing memoir and maybe has some, something to offer us soon.
Yeah.
I think there's always a lot to learn when it comes to writing process.
Absolutely. In fact, I was interviewed on another podcast yesterday. It's not going to go out till the end of the year, but in the interview, they were asking me a bunch of questions about memoir and about my process and what I thought the difference was between memoir and fiction. And there was some, like, I had to pull, it was questions that I hadn't really thought of before. So I was really learning actually as I was answering.
Right.
Wow, I didn't know I believed that.
I love that feeling. It's like every corner conversation at a writer's conference. Someone asks you a question and you start answering it. And you're like, oh yeah, right. This is the answer. Right. You're getting there.
So other housekeeping stuff, announcements, another plug for Erick's new book, Chasing Shadows. Go get it at Amazon.
Please do.
Is it still 99 cents or did you finally raise it up?
I did. Yes, the pricing is back to $2.99, but it's on Kindle Unlimited. So if you have that, you can just add it to your 10 books. Yeah.
A reminder that Passion Planner launched their new line of annual dated planners for 2023. I
saw that you
already got mine.
I saw it.
I'm already thinking
it brings me joy to see you get that much joy out of something. To be honest, like I look at that, like I don't get that much joy out of any work-related things. So
I'm a planner nerd. My referral link and the discount code is in the show notes. Writercraft Writing Retreat is scheduled for August 24th to the 27th, 2023. Tickets are $900 this year and include all the lodging and all the gourmet meals and instruction and coaching and retreat time on the river in Marcola, Oregon. Payment plans are available and registration opens November 1st. But if you're a patron, then you'll get a discount and you can register now. So you can go to valerieihsan.com/retreat for more information.
Maybe we can meet all these lovely people in Marcola next year.
Yeah. So what are you reading?
I'm reading Death Masks. It's the next book in the Dresden Files series. I actually just picked it up last night. And
that's Jim Butcher.
Jim Butcher, yeah. I'm gonna get through that series. I'm gonna alternate books, one Dresden on, one off. Do that until I'm through with the series, or
That's
get bored with this. Yeah. He's great. The books are great, and I sort of supplement the physical reading with the audiobook, and the guy that does the performance for Harry Dresden on the audiobooks is fantastic. So it's great, but there is a lull in the series apparently, and maybe I'll take a little break there. I don't know. So maybe I think it's like book 9. People say gets a little slow, but I don't know. What do they know, right? I may love book 9. It may be my favorite book in the whole series, and then I'll be the outlier. So what are you reading?
Well, I just finished A Prayer for the Crown Shy, that Becky Chambers book, the Monk and Robot book. And Actually, that's not true. Just last night, I finished reading that arc that I was talking about, The Drinking
Right.
Games by Sarah. I don't know if it's Levi or Levy, Levy.
Hmm. Could be
Um,
either.
could be either. It comes out January 3rd. So I just finished that last night. And so I have two options.
Mm.
And so I'm feeling a mystery. This is what I'm feeling. So
It's that
I've
time of
got,
year. The light's changing. It's getting a
that's
little
true.
darker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I can read the next Louise Penny book, which I can't read series that close together, even one on, one off. So it's been, I don't know, probably 6 months since I've read a Louise Penny book. So the next one
Okay.
that I'm up against is A Rule Against Murder. But I also found this book in the dollar rack at Tsunami, and it looks kind of fun. It's a mystery. It's called Jane and the Unpleasantness at Scargrave Manor.
Wow. The
Being the first,
unpleasantness.
yes, being the first Jane Austen mystery. That's the subtitle. So it's,
Interesting.
yeah, so it's mysteries with Jane Austen as the heroine, as the sleuth. So, and
Now, you're a fan of
it's
that
got,
Regency
I
romance kind
do,
of stuff,
yeah,
right?
yeah. So
Okay.
this would be Regency mystery, I guess, but
Regency mystery.
so yeah. But it takes a little bit to get into that lingo, into that language. And so
Yeah.
I will probably bring both of these to my work at the bookstore today, and during my lunch break, I'll start the Jane Austen mystery, and if it's just I can't get into the language, I'll just switch over to Louise Penny because I know that's easy to read. So it'll be
So,
one of those two books.
so question. I've never read any of the there's like a whole industry of books based on like Jane Austen, mysteries, and I haven't I've never delved into those, whether it be like the new Sherlock Holmesy stuff, and
Hmm.
I just wonder if I were to pick up a book of Jane Austen inspired mysteries, or where Jane Austen is a character. I mean, I haven't read Jane Austen since like 1997 when I took it in an English class. I
Hmm.
just wonder if you're not fresh with the source material, the inspiration material. I wonder if that takes away from the experience. Is that
I don't
Am I overthinking it?
um with this mystery, with this Jane Austen mystery, whatever, I don't think that that would be true. Because Jane, when I read Jane Austen, I'm reading her characters, so like Pride and
Right,
Prejudice or Emma or something like that. So the spin-off stuff, if you will, I don't know, the Austen inspired work that I've read before is reimagining her characters, like continuing on the story after Pride and Prejudice
right,
left. So it's Mr. and Mrs. Darcy and
right.
their adventures or whatever, their and so that I think you would need to I mean, not need, but the fact that I'm a
It
fan,
would improve it.
makes it,
Yeah,
yeah, I'm like, ooh, I want to know what happens. So I don't know. Because I've read Austen, I don't know if those books lose anything if I haven't read. I can't go backwards in
yeah.
time. So my
But
answer is I don't know,
you
but I
don't
don't
know.
think it would be true for something like this because it's not a continuation of already written characters.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
there's
not a
a
sequel. It's a brand new character. It's just inspired by somebody in history.
right. I guess I shouldn't say I don't read any of that kind of continuation of existing literary characters. I read a lot of Lovecraft inspired stuff, and there's a lot of people reimagining the adventures of other characters. I'm so steeped in that mythos that it's easy to follow it. I just wonder what those authors are trying to capitalize on. Is it the name recognition? Is it an easy access to the genre, or is there a crowd of people that are genuinely looking for continuing adventures of those characters? Or is it all three? Maybe, I don't know.
I think it's a little bit of all three. I think that there are people that appreciate, since we're talking about Jane Austen, or
Right,
it could be anybody, Mark Twain or whatever, but since they prefer or not prefer, but like that writing style and
right.
wish it were still around because it's not very, it's not contemporary
Yeah,
writing.
yeah.
and and if they know that there's a market of people out there that are looking for that and wishing that we're still around, then yes, that would be someone you could market to.
Mm,
However, I think that writers are not necessarily like, that's not their first inclination. They're not like, gee, I bet people are really looking for this. I think it's more, gee, I wonder what happened after Mr. Darcy
right.
you know what I mean? I
Yeah.
think it's just the love of the characters that inspired the writers to write. Like I really like those Gregory Maguire books.
Hmm.
It's like a reimagining of fairy tales. He wrote Wicked and
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so one I really liked Confessions of an Ugly Stepsister. So it was a Cinderella story, but not at all. There was like no magic in it or anything. And it was
Right.
just, he just loosely based the novel on, it was a historical novel. It took place
Right.
in, I can't even remember now, Holland or something like that. It took place somewhere remote and back in the 1500s or something like that. And I kind of imagined what if Cinderella weren't a fairy tale with dancing mice, what would the story really be like? So,
Right. Yeah, I'm always interested in just where there's such a broad array of books anymore, and every time I dip into the uh, Kindle store, I find like, wow, there's this subworld and there's that
mhm.
subworld, and some of it seems intuitive to me, and some of it I just wonder like where's the cart and where's the horse in this book? Is it some this all sounds a lot like English majors just being released on the world and like like this is what happens when a bunch of English majors decide to start writing books, like I love Jane Austen, why don't I keep writing that? So yeah, I'm always wondering what, I guess, and I always have this marketing mind too. It's like where somebody's writing it, they're marketing it, they had to have thought about it. So
Yeah, I don't know the quick answer for that. I don't have a podcast answer for that, Eric.
well, maybe I should drum up like one of those authors as a guest and we can talk to them, because I find that, yeah, I would be really interested to know like what the reimagined book market is like and how that works, where
Mhm.
you,
Where the ideas stem from.
there's probably like a Facebook group and there's probably a large community of people that are having
Yeah.
an ongoing conversation about it. So
And there was
maybe I'll go dip my
back,
toes.
I want to say maybe 10 years ago, there started to be like this revival of fairy tale reimaginings, and they were all
Right.
over the place. And so, yeah. What else has been going on in your writing world?
I am putting together the next two books in my series. I've decided to, so I had a novel lined up to write after the previous novel, after Chasing Shadows. And I decided to put into that chronology, I decided to put two novellas. And I had two short stories written that I was just going to release as newsletter fodder or
Hmm.
freebies on Amazon. I was just going to do that. And as I looked at them, I realized these were actually larger stories if I gave them that imagination. So
Hmm.
I've been rewriting two short stories as novellas, which came together intuitively. I wasn't forcing anything. Well,
Hmm.
we'll see what writers group Gary thinks. He may think I'm forcing it, but they when I got into the mindset of expanding the story, they came together.
Nice.
So
That's
that
exciting.
is that yeah, it felt good. So I've been doing that and lining those up. And part of that, I think I've said this on this podcast before. I've seen so many novellas out there. I mean, even in Pal's books, the shelves are stocked
Hmm.
with
Yeah.
short reads, and it feels to me like that's part of where the market's going. And I think by listening to the market, you're probably also listening to readers. So I can't hurt to put two novellas into that sequence of stories, because the novel, I'm designing those novellas so that the novel will still stand on its own. It will still work. So there's that. And then I've also been I'm coming up with a Patreon account in my Book of Witness series with the little ghost stories. I've decided I'm going to do something like that. I have a lot of readers that have said, hey, where are those little ghost weird mysteries you do? And so I've thought, okay, let's just do a Patreon account where that's the story.
I think that's an amazing idea. I think that's really great.
Yeah.
I'll sign up for it.
Yay. Yay. So
Wait, your first patron.
Yeah. Oh, I can make that happen. So I've got like a little notebook going. I'm just going to fill this notebook with ideas. And then I think I'm going to launch in 2023, early in the year. And we'll go.
That's exciting.
It is. Thank you. What about you?
I sent off my manuscript to the line editor.
Yay.
Yay. So my book is done enough that I can't look at it anymore.
You can't look at it.
I can't look at it anymore. So I've got the next few weeks open and until I, get the notes back from her. And then so I'll be working on my author website. I think that's what I'm going to be focusing on, that because it really needs an overhaul. I haven't looked at it really for 3 or 4 years. I mean, that's not true, but it needs some finessing and updating. And I also want to write on my, I thought I had a good reader magnet. And after I read Tammy Librick's book, I realized I don't. So I want to work on my reader magnet the next few weeks also, and publishing back end stuff.
You're going to push that book down the line for me, because I have some fear that I think that's a core fear I have in my marketing world, is that I don't have the right reader magnet. And I'll bet if I read that book, I'll go scrambling to write a new one. We should have a discussion on this podcast about author sites, because I put a lot of time into my business site, a ton of it, because it makes the money. But the author site needs to start catch up. And I'm looking at it like this is going to be a project here soon too, because it's not neglected, but the garden needs watering.
Yeah. Ditto. All right. Well, that I was going to say that leads us into, but it kind of doesn't actually.
We can do clumsy segues. I mean, people aren't going to be upset.
That was a clumsy segue.
We can do an intentional segue.
It's the morning and we're still drinking coffee.
Right.
Okay. So author side hustles.
Here we go.
So what is your side hustle? Let's just start with that. What do you do?
Well, my side hustle is really my main gig. So it's, for me, like my baseline author service is that I provide ghostwriting, and I provide ghostwriting in full-length manuscripts for clients that have an idea and can't write it, won't get around to writing it. Like, I have a new client coming in who said she's been trying to write her book for 5 or 6 years and just hasn't gotten to it, and so she's hiring me to do it. The other branch of that is I do screenplays. I have a number of screenplay clients. So I create. I don't like the term content creator all the time, but that's kind of what I do as a side hustle. Or that's my hustle. I do a few content edits for clients. I kind of have like a referral base going with a few people. So
by content edit, you mean like website or marketing content, copywriting content?
Well, I do that too. Actually, I do a lot of marketing content for websites, for people doing, this is kind of an odd niche. So I do scripts for YouTube channels. I have multiple clients, like a food network that I do, a YouTube food channel. I have a YouTube real estate channel that I do their scripts. So like I write for their clients. But when I say content edit, I mean like I do like developmental editing for a few authors. It's not something that I focus on, but it's something that comes to me because I have a few connections that are not developmental editors that will just pass me work. So I do that. It's a lot. I mean, it's like a work salad sometimes. It feels like I've just got, like today, I've got to work on a book that I need to get to the finish. And I've got a screenplay that needs to get to the finish. And it's just sometimes, yeah, it feels like a work salad. And I'd love to get out of that.
So let's go down into the weeds a little bit. So you have multiple clients that you work with at the same time, then. That's what I'm hearing you say. You start a job, you start a job.
I
So
have
how is it,
currently
how do you
9
schedule
clients.
your side hustles, main hustle, side slash main?
That is a week to week process. Um, Usually projects are at different stages. Every project requires different attention at different times, right? So when I'm
Oh.
starting a book project, that's a lot of interviewing, that's a lot of information gathering. I wouldn't have 2 projects in that phase because that repeated energy just doesn't work for me. So I
Mhm.
usually have one project that's starting, one project that's, I'm in the midst of writing something, I'm in the midst of rewriting. So there's 9. So I do actually at this point have multiple projects at the same phase. I've got a lot of people right now that are at that end phase where they're trying to get done, and because I don't know if it was the summer or what have you, but they just kind of lagged. So I've got multiple. If I look at my chart, I have multiple people on their last payment, and it's just a matter of them checking that box for me. So
Okay.
I organize it by, like, each week I choose, like, I look at what 2 projects are pushing or are the most important, and I focus on those, and I try each week to get through what I would see as like a sort of an interior benchmark. Like today, like this week, I've got a client, I'm going to try to get through part 1 of her book. I'm rewriting part 1 of her book. That's my internal deadline. There's no deadline for her attached to that, but for
Mhm.
me, like that, I'll know I'm good. I also have a screenplay. I want to get to page 15 because that client's kind of getting eager to see the first act. So I keep it moving like that.
Cool. That's really interesting. I had no idea how that worked at all. I totally imagined ghostwriting to be something completely different. So that
Well,
was
how did you
really
imagine
interesting.
it?
Well, the way I work usually is if I have an editing client. So I guess let's move over to me momentarily. So I provide um, editing services, and
Excellent editing
of
services,
those,
by the way. So
thank
to
you.
plug.
And in that editing umbrella, I will do manuscript assessment, a diagnostic tool, where I'm not editing it, I'm just reading the manuscript and giving you a report of what's working and what's not. So I've got a manuscript assessment, I've got line editing, um, I've got or proofreading, I guess. So when I get an editing client, that means I need to read an entire novel or
Right.
memoir
Yeah.
and then do the work around it, whatever that is. So if it's line editing, of course, I'm just sort of reading it as I go.
Right.
um, Sometimes I even read it twice, depending on the project and how much editing it needs. If it's like a really heavy edit, I'll sometimes go through and just do a quick line edit, of stuff that's jumping out at me and
Right.
kind of reading it for continuity, I guess.
Right.
And then I'll go through it again with more of those laser eyes, looking
Right.
for every single sentence. Is this the right way to say it? So that means, kind of reading it twice even. So when I have an editing client, usually I just book them for that month. So I only have one client a month for editing. Now I also do coaching, and those are just, I can do those weekly. If or often
Right.
if it's an ongoing client, then it's like every 2 weeks we'll meet on Zoom for an hour, and then I've got some, maybe an hour's worth of other work afterwards where I'm like typing up the notes and I'm, editing the video file and then sending it all over via email. And, so that takes another 45 minutes or something like that. Um, so that I can do weekly.
Mhm. Interesting. My goal is always to have, like, ideally I would have 3 or 4 clients. That would be it. Part of what prohibits that is that it's just because this is the main gig, there's just a bottom line factor that comes
Yeah.
into play. And so I have to make sure that whatever work I'm doing keeps that bottom line satisfied. And part of I have to say, part of the the hang up, it is a catch-22 because I do put in equal, if not more, I put more attention into the author side of things. It's where my heart lies. I'm always borrowing time from my clients and I give the clients good work, but when it comes down to, if at the end of the week there's some extra time, I'm always focusing on developing the author business, because what I would like to do is make, as I think I said last week, make this a true side hustle and make the author business more of a business. I mean, realistically, it takes a lot more books than I have to make a living, and I don't want to squeeze every novel I write. Like, I see a lot of authors like squeezing those books to make as much money as they can. I would like to set it and forget it and have, like JF Penn talks about, So I would love to make this a side hustle. In that world, that would be 3 or 4 clients, long. The client servicing issue is, I love onboarding a client. I love that relationship, but it takes a lot of time.
Hmm.
So ideally, if I had fewer clients that I could spend more time on with higher paying jobs, that's what I'm trying to get toward. But that's hard, really positioning your website to be to draw that kind of client takes a lot of time and patience. So, because there are fewer of them out there, more
Yeah.
people want you to edit than want you to write the book.
Right. So that leads me thinking about how do you get those clients? How do you get any client? And there's a lot of, generalized marketing
Right,
advice that you can find anywhere that works with this too, hit your mailing list, do an
right,
exclusive offer, or,
right,
you know, and being on podcasts
right,
like ours, or, if you
right.
want to be interviewed on our podcast and talk about your specialty, right on, contact
Do
us.
it. Let's have you.
You could go to writercraftpodcast@gmail.com. But in terms of the time it takes to find the clients, like that's part of the side hustle.
That
And
is,
so, and I find that if you aren't a freelance anything,
right.
writer or yoga teacher or whatever, if you have a freelance gig, a lot of your time is just trying to provide content marketing,
Yeah,
or going out there and trying to promote yourself somehow, whether that's being interviewed on podcasts or pitching podcasts or researching podcasts to be, to pitch, or writing blog posts or doing podcasts, like we're doing. This is content marketing. So that all takes a lot of time. There's a website that I also work for, and so I provide like sample edits, or any, it doesn't even have to be this website I work for, but so if there's a client that comes to me and says, like, how much would this be if I had you, edit my book, sometimes I can like take a look at their work and be like, well, this was before I had a
right,
per page price, before I worked hourly. And so that involved like having to do a sample for someone, like doing 5 or
yeah,
10 pages and seeing what it was like, and then coming up with a price. And so that took a lot of time. So now I don't, I've worked my way out of that time. So that's good. That gives me some time back. I can just say, it's this much a page.
right. That's
Um,
key. You have
but yeah.
pricing, knowing what you're charging,
Hmm.
knowing what the market rate is,
Hmm.
knowing where you fit into the tiers in the market, and then knowing how to price yourself
Hmm.
saves a lot of time and a lot of energy in that sort of building the client
Yeah, if you can
getting the client on
automate
board.
anything, that's great for building a business or having a side hustle at all. I mean, maybe you don't have aspirations to make this your full-time work. Maybe you do want this to just be a side hustle always.
Right.
And that's rad, if you just want to make, buy gas for your car or, pay the electric bill with the money that you get from whatever your side hustle is, that's awesome. It
Yeah, I
doesn't
think
have it
it's
doesn't have to be like but the more that you automate, the easier it will be, whether it is just a side hustle that will stay a side hustle or something that will grow bigger. And so,
right.
like you said, having the SOP, deciding what your
Yeah.
practices are, what your prices are. I have a when somebody wants to meet with me or check me out, whatever, usually it starts with an email and they say what
Right.
they're doing. And instead of emailing back and forth 800 times, I now have a way for them to just book a quick appointment on my
Yeah.
website. So I'm out of that. I've already set my schedule up there. They can just go in and pick what's good for them. And then we can have a quick conversation and then decide what to do from there. So any way
And I
you can
think,
automate like that is good
right.
for you.
And I think I'm trying to put myself in the head of someone who's just starting the thought process on this. What does that sound like? When I think for me, it used to sound impersonal. Like I'm going to automate as much of this as I can. And I used to think that sounded like, oh, that doesn't sound like personal service at all. But I think we're at the stage in the service economy where people like that level of polish. When
Hmm.
you get onto a site, book an appointment, when you fill out this questionnaire, those kind of things, I think people feel like they're in good hands. um, I have only the response I've gotten from prospective clients as I have automated has never been, well, this feels impersonal. In fact, a lot of people say, hey, when I got onto your site, I knew you're the one I wanted. And I think part of that is the voice of the blogs, and part of that is the fact that it doesn't feel like it's something slapdash. It
Hmm.
feels like the service you're getting is cultivated, professional, and I do, I'm able to com- and you'll know whatever your side hustle is, just this is thinking down the line. When you start out, let's say you're going to start out as a proofreader, and proofreader rates have a range of, you know, I don't know what the rates are, but let's say they're a range from 1 to 3, 1 to 5. When you start, you're not going to start at the top of your rate. You don't have the testimonials. You don't really have the experience, even though you might have the skill. But as you go, like, you want your site to reflect that. Like, if you're going to start charging that higher rate, you need to look like those sites that person that charges that higher rate.
Hmm.
um, One of the things that did my business a good turn was I went back. It was right at the beginning of the pandemic. I had all the time in the world, but I went back and I looked at all the blogs that were getting clicks, organic clicks, things I wasn't paying for advertising on. And I went and looked at them. I just looked at the blog I hadn't seen in maybe 2 years, or the page that I hadn't looked at in 2 years. And some of them were really shoddy looking, I have to say. I would look at them, the graphics looked off, there would be, it just didn't look right. And so I went back and I think I redid like 75 blogs in a couple of
Wow.
months. I did like one a day
Hmm.
and republish them with better graphics and things. And all of that pays off. I mean, truly, your website, what they talk about your mailing list being your property. This is your property. Nobody can
Hmm.
take your mailing list away from you. But I think your website is, if you're doing a side hustle, is that mailing list as much as anything else. Like, that is when people go to that, you want them to spend as much time as possible. You want them to bounce around between blogs, reading what you have to say, linking to things, and finding you. And that's why you put all that time into a blog. So I think if you're starting out on this, that's where to start putting your energy, because ultimately we could get into the whole thing about SEO, which is boring and really technical. But if you're going to build that search engine, if you're going to make that search engine find you, you have to start by creating content, and that content is ultimately for a reader that will want to hire you. It's got to look good, feel good, on brand.
Yeah. So if you don't know what that is yet, that's okay. You can
Yeah.
start by picking, one thing that you think you could provide,
Right.
whatever that is. Maybe it's writing query letters for people that are submitting to agents, or maybe it's proofreading college admissions essays, or, it could be anything. And
Anything.
just pick that one thing and kind of, build your website or just a mailing list, or, kind of create
Yeah.
sort of that
Something.
online brochure somehow, and pick a price, research what the going rate is. Maybe if you're just starting, hit the lower end of that till you get some testimonials on your website. And
then for those things, I'll just say, ask for those things. You
the
need,
testimonials.
yeah, you need reviews, you need testimonials. And I didn't have, just as an example, up until the spring, I had an SEO pro I hired, and now we work together to build my site. She said, you have 0 reviews on Google reviews. And I said, well, nobody's left one. She said, ask for one. I've asked 11 times for reviews. I've gotten 11 positive reviews. So ask.
Okay.
You definitely, if you need something, you're not getting it, you need to ask for it, because people don't intuitively do, well, in the review world, people just don't intuitively do it. So just always ask for reviews. Yeah.
In closing, I'd also like to say that a side hustle, in my mind, is I've got the day job at the corporate office or the bookstore or the whatever, and then I have something else that I'm doing to supplement my income.
Right.
And in the case of you and I, we are authors and we want to write books and we want to make money off of our books. And most people, most writers don't make a living off of book sales alone.
No, it would be really hard to do that.
So your author business umbrella here, I'm YouTubing this visual of an umbrella. Your author business is going to have several income streams. And so one of them is book sales in all the different formats and all the different countries and languages or whatever. And then there is editing services, or, whatever your other things are that you provide for authors. And I guess I just wanted to reiterate that right now I have a side hustle of editing and coaching while I'm working at the bookstore. But once I don't work at the bookstore, this is my main gig. Editing is no longer going to be, my side hustle. It will be part of my author business, which will include writing books and selling books, teaching, making classes, audiobooks, manuscript assessment, coaching, line editing. It'll be all of those things, and all of those things will be my author business. And that's the business model that I am choosing for myself. So none of this will be side hustle. It will be my author business.
And I think you hit on a couple of things that to close with, that I like, and that is, like, if you are getting into any sort of, even if it is, your side business, even if you don't envision yourself leaving that corporate job, giving up that sweet health insurance, if you're not going to give that up and you're just looking at a way to make this a bigger part of your world, that whole thing about income streams is really key, because the income streams don't start out very strong when you're doing any of this. So the more of, if you're positioning yourself to have multiple, then I think that it gives you that boost, that, like, okay, what I'm doing, my time is really worth it. So I think it's worthy to, like, all right, I'm going to try to sell my book and I'm going to start editing. This is what I'm doing. And those things will grow. The other thing too, I think you're doing this to help supplement your income, to build some sort of confidence around an author business. I also think that it gives you an insight into yourself as an author, your own work, I don't, and I can't say that reading a client book or working on a client book has ever directly influenced what I write, but it gives you access to that community and what other people are doing, what they look like, how it feels. You start doing some research because you want to inform a client. You've educated yourself. There's a lot of, adjacent development of your own craft that comes from working with other people. So I think going into it with a learning mentality too is very helpful to making it holistically worthwhile.
That Thank you for saying that, because one thing that I
You're
struggle
welcome.
one thing I struggle with a lot, like every day. I don't know if I should say this on this podcast, but
Oh, you should.
I struggle with the line between looking professional and acting professional, with my clients, and and learning,
Right.
because
That's
in my head, I want to say this wrongly, wrongly thought that being professional meant that you were the expert in this thing, and that you couldn't be an expert unless you were professional, and you couldn't be professional unless you were an expert. Like they were intertwined. And that is totally not true.
no, I don't
Professionalism
think
has
anybody
to
has that.
do with
I don't think anybody has that expectations. Those are clients to stay away from. Ones who are like, you're not, like run away from people who think that you need to have every answer because that's you can't.
And in fact, I've heard, like, for coaching, that people sometimes choose coaches that don't look like they've got it all put together, like, because they
Right.
can't
It's
relate to
less
that.
intimidating.
It
Yeah.
is, yeah. So I struggle with, I've started calling it learning in public.
Right.
So
But I
being able to
but that's
say, like,
branding.
I don't know the answer to that, let me find it out for you. Or, hey, I want to, it's more, I have no problem saying I don't know. I have no problem with that. What I worry about, or have in the past, has been like wanting it to have that polish, the website or the presentation or the
Right.
launch of whatever, wanting it to look polished and feeling like it's just not there yet. And so then I don't do the thing, whether it's, the class, or launch a coaching program, or, whatever it is that I've side hustled, whatever I've
Right.
set up to be my side hustle. I keep waiting until it's perfect, and then I will launch, and then I will do the thing. And then I will say, I'm a narrator or whatever it is.
Right.
And you just can't wait that long,
Well, I think, yeah, this could be a whole nother, like the whole fake it till you make it, like those kind of feelings that come with anything you do
It's
creatively, anything.
mindset. Yeah.
Yeah, it's mindset. But I think there's two things to hit on. Like one, partly it's your branding, right? If you brand yourself as like I worked with a guy for a really long time, absolutely fits the definition, book marketing expert. That's his brand. That's what he calls himself. And I've seen him market books that are mediocre into bestsellers because he's just that guy. If you look at his site, everything says expert. His picture is him in a tie. Everything is expert, 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 expert. I did some copywriting for him. He wanted, if you're not marketing yourself as that, if you're giving yourself that feeling like you're talking about, people who don't look like they're in a suit and tie and like ready to go into a board meeting, I'm always comfortable saying to people, I like to give them a little context, like, okay, I've seen something like that. Let me find out what's happening with the market in that now, or let's look at let me do a little research to get you, we'll catch up to what's happening now. People want to know that. And I think, again, it's the client you want. If you're getting the right clients to your site, they're expecting you to learn with them.
Mm-hmm.
They're just, they expect you to teach them, but they're not gonna, like, they don't want canned answers. I avoid those people like the plague because that's just not real. It's not, they're not out there. Enjoy it too. Like
Enjoy it.
it's got to be something. If you're gonna do this, I think if it's gonna detract from the hustle, if the side hustle can't borrow from the hustle, if it's if it stresses you out to proofread because you're a perfectionist and you can't handle people's, stuff, don't do it, because it's going to take away from something. Make sure that it's a side hustle, something you can compartmentalize and just like keep in that place. If you're writing work, I early on, I started, one of the first books I worked on was a book about a really traumatic experience. And this was when writing was a side hustle for me. It was really hard not to go to work thinking about the story that I was working on. I mean, I would get up and work on this book and then go to work and worry about the book because it was so traumatic. I mean, I think just having some boundaries around it too is valuable, because it does take away. You are giving your time and energy to something. Just make sure it's something you can afford to do.
So in the spirit of full disclosure and learning in public, then I would like to say,
Okay.
I've only said this to my mailing list and to my patrons, but I am interested in starting to do book coaching for people. And I think that I would be really awesome at it. And I
You
have
are
had
awesome at it.
experience doing things like it and a lot of adjacent things. I've been an editor for 17 years, but I've never like worked with someone to write their book with them. So I think that would be fun. And I would like to add that to my author services menu. So if anybody is interested in learning along with me,
And we
in
should talk
this,
about that, because in my SEO, when I talk to my SEO person about, niches that I can find my way into, one of the things she's always hitting me up with is like, it looks like a lot of people don't have many thousands to write a book. They have fewer thousands to be coached. And it looks like that's a market that's out there. So maybe I could share some of you with what I've learned with you about how
yes,
to reach that market, because it's there. It's definitely there.
cool. Well, that's
And I
exciting.
know some writing coaches that are not as good as you. So some writing coaches whose perspectives on things I don't necessarily think match yours. So anyway, I will
Well,
share
there you
that
go.
information
You've
with
heard
you.
it from Eric, so it must be true. He's the expert.
Don't say that. No, no. You're going to
Nobody
send me
wants to
into
wear
the
that
rest of my day
expert hat.
worrying about that like label. It's going to be too much.
I know. I don't want to say that I'm the expert at anything, because, that assumes that I have attained perfection in this area.
Right.
And I have a lot of experience in this area. I can say that. But
Yeah, and I'll just put myself out there and say, like, I would love to talk to anybody that wants to thinking about doing this, that wants to do it. I'd love to, whether it's in this podcast or just privately, reach out to me, because I think I started a business and I made a million mistakes and I got a couple of things right. And so I would be willing to share some of that, just more specific insight,
mhm.
because you can really lose time and energy by not, like, how you start really matters. I think it really counts. So reach out.
Awesome. I'm going to put that in the resources. Contact Eric for business starting advice. Is that kind of?
Not expert advice, as we've discussed.
Yes.
Not expert advice, just, and I'll make you laugh. I'll tell you some funny stories about what I did wrong, and then we'll talk about how you can get it right.
All right. And I will say contact Valerie for book coaching or
And as
help.
someone who's gotten some coaching from you, like some editorial, like, I will say that you are definitely barking up the right tree. I think you would be great at it. And yeah.
Thank you. All right. So let's close. Thanks for talking to me about author side
Absolutely. My
hustles.
pleasure.
It was super fun. Our next episode is going to be on publication and production schedules.
Oh, gosh.
It's kind of scary, but I
I
promise
just broke out in a sweat, a
the
cold sweat right there.
episode will not be scary. It will help you not feel scared about this. Promise.
That's our goal, right?
Yeah. All right. Thanks for talking with me this week.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thank
See you
you.
next week.
See
Bye
ya.
for now.